up, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. In case you aren't aware, unfortunately, Jalin Turner has retired from MMA. And this sucks because Jalin Turner is a very fun fighter, and it's nice to see him send people to the shadow realm. But unfortunately, just retiring at 29 years of age, I've got to say it, he has wasted potential. And again, I like Jalin Turner. I don't like saying that about him, but it's the truth. 29 years of age, a skilled fighter, a fun fighter, and I don't think his record on paper really reflects how skilled he really was. So let's go through his resume and take a look at Jalin Turner's career. So from the beginning, he starts his MMA career at 20 years of age, and he picks up a win in the very first round, goes on to pick up another first round victory. Lovely. Then he goes 2-2, and it's a bit rocky road, you know what I mean? Some wins here and there, some lows here and there. It is what it is. It happens with some fighters. Picks up some wins, picks up some losses as well. All of his wins coming by finish, may I add. And then he makes it to the UFC. Now, I actually remember watching this fight against Jalin Turner. He would have been, what, 22 years old at the welterweight division. And he got flatlined very quickly on his UFC debut. But I don't feel like there was any... It was a weird start to a UFC career, but I don't feel like there's any shame of that, considering Vicente Luque was fucking incredible and a bastard to deal with, and arguably prime Luque. He got flatlined in the first round, and then he makes a move down to 155, and he gets a win on his 155 debut. I believe this was 155 at least anyway. Yes, lightweight. So he goes down to 155, and he was always big for 155 as well. Maybe he shouldn't have made it to 155 and just stayed at 170, but regardless, he made his way to 155, gets a win against Callum Potter in the very first round, and then in his next fight loses to Matt Favola. To be fair, that's not even a terrible loss either. I mean, ideally it's not ideal because Matt Favola is just okay. He's a solid fighter, nothing crazy, but still, at least he's a name. At least it's not a nobody. Then he goes on a nice winning streak, beating Josh Kulabau, beating Brock Weaver. I remember when everyone hated Brock Weaver as well, so that was a nice one. He beat Medic, beat Jamie Malarkey, beat Brad Riddell, and he was on a nice little tear up, again, finishing everyone right here. So all of his wins were all coming by finish. He wasn't going to a decision at all. None of these were going the distance. He was finishing every single fighter within 1 or 2 rounds, looking gorgeous. And then he gets the first loss, well, the second loss in the 155 division, but the first loss after getting a bit of momentum to Gamrot, and this was a razor thin victory for Gamrot. This was a very close fight. It could have gone either way, and he lost to Gamrot. Gamrot had been very scary, had a win over Arman Sarukian, lost to Benio Dariush, but obviously was one of the top fighters in that lightweight division, and he lost to him in a very close fight though, and I don't think there's any shame in that. Again, you're on a nice little tear up, you come up on against a stylistic nightmare against Gamrot, and you do really well against him and made it a fucker for Gamrot. After this, he had Dan Hooker, loses again. Very close fight, very contested, but he had it all going for him. Threw the kitchen sink at Dan Hooker, then gassed out, and Dan Hooker took over. And it was just one of them, a very fun fight though. He made a Gamrot fight very foreign as well, which is quite hard in my opinion. But he also had a banger against Dan Hooker. And it's just like he showed how skilled he was in both of these fights. Even though he lost, he's shown to everyone that he could mix it in there against the top of a lightweight division. He was able to do that, and then he comes back and beats Bobby Green by getting a knockout, and it was a brutal knockout as well against Bobby Green. The ground and pound was horrible. Battered Bobby Green, and it's probably the reason why Bobby Green's durability is no longer there. Then he loses to Renato Moicano at the biggest UFC event of all time, UFC 300, where he drops Moicano early on, and then Moicano comes back to get the ground and pound victory in the second round. The skill was there, but he let it slip. He let it slip for just a moment, and then his most recent outing against Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC 330, where he got submitted in the very first round. But again, I don't think there's any problems. Like, you look at these names who he's losing to. Again, Matt Favola's a bit of an iffy one. That's probably the most iffy one in his UFC career, because you've got some ones I've never heard of here. But Vicente Luque, a prime Luque at 170 for your UFC debut, no shame in that. And then you have Gamrot, no shame. Dan Hooker, no shame. Moicano, no shame. Ignacio Bahamondes, who looks amazing right now, no shame in that. So he's getting losses, but these against great opposition. And then in 3 of these fights, the Gamrot could have gone his way. Dan Hooker, he had a lot of success and then just let it slip. Moicano, he had hurt and could have finished, but just was fucking brain dead and didn't. And then Bahamondes, fair enough. But those 3 names right there, the biggest names of the losses, he had moments of success and could have very easily won at points. So I feel like it is a bit of a shame that he has retired, because he definitely had the skill and he was a bastard for everyone who he fought. And this just fucking sucks, because Jalin Turner is a perfect fighter who you need in an MMA organization. Every single MMA organization needs a Jalin Turner in their organization. A fighter who's very skilled. You can have close fights against the best in the division, and not only that, is always in entertaining fights and absolute bangers, and also promotional and branding wise, he can knock fuckers out. He has stupid power. That is a fighter you need in an MMA organization, and at 29 years of age, he is now gone. And you know what? Another thing that's a shame, at the start of the video, I said, in case you don't know, Jalin Turner has retired. Well, the reason I said that is because his retirement, I feel like, is getting no coverage whatsoever. And I feel like it's partially his fault, you know, because I know emotions are flaring high, especially when you've lost, so I don't exactly blame him too much. But after his loss, he didn't go on the mic and, you know, announce his retirement. He didn't throw his gloves in the middle of the octagon. He went to John Morgan, an MMA reporter, backstage, and told him that he was retiring. And John Morgan was like, before I put this out, you know, you might want to consider this. And Jalin Turner was like, nah, I've been just thinking about this since UFC 300. And that's about the most amount of coverage I've heard about Jalin Turner retiring, and I think it's such a shame, because he was a fan favorite. People loved him. He was a super fun fighter. I've gone over these points, but you know what I mean? No retirement should be unheard of like that, in my opinion. And as for the retirement itself, of course, I'm going to be selfish and say, oh, I'd love him to carry on. He's still very young. He's still very skilled. Give all these reasons I've been giving throughout the video. But at the end of the day, if this guy just hasn't got it anymore, only he knows that, and only he knows himself whether he should carry on with the sport or not. Me selfishly thinking, I want him to come back in like a year's time and be like, oh, you know what, I've missed it, I shouldn't have retired, and comes back to it. But sometimes that isn't the case. People fall out of love with things, and that's okay. I'm just hoping that Jalin Turner can find his love back for the sport of MMA, because he's really good at it. He's really fun when he does it. I hope to see him back very soon. And who knows, maybe with a bit of time off, and if he does come back, maybe he goes up to 170, because I think he was way too big for 155, to be honest. Way too big. 170, things could be a lot different. Again, he was a bastard for everyone at 155. I feel like he could be a bastard for a lot of people at 170 as well. I want to see him back in the octagon. I know he's retired, but just let me be selfish and in denial a bit, and a bit delusional sprinkled in as well. But what do you guys think about Jalin Turner retiring? What did you think about his overall MMA career? Let me know in the comments. Were you a fan of Jalin Turner? I'd love to know. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.